Last week at an event in New York City, Amazon announced the Fire TV, their streaming media box. So essentially, this thing is the Apple TV, but for people who really love their Prime subscription, right?
And it says Amazon on the top instead of an Apple.
Yes, there's a nice small Amazon logo on top, and overall the whole thing is very, very small, very, very dense. It's covered in this really nice matte black plastic. It's super thin and surprisingly heavy, and that's because inside is pretty much a giant heat sink, and there's all of this power inside. There's a 1.7 gigahertz quad-core processor, a dedicated GPU, 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's far, far more powerful than any other streaming media box out there. When they were announcing the product, they made a big deal about how they have this really great voice search. It's super fast, super accurate, and I've got to say, they're right. It's better and faster than pretty much any other voice search I've seen out there.
It's built into the remote?
Yeah, they've got a little microphone in there. And it's, you hold down the button, you say what you want to watch, or an actor whose movie you're looking for, and it comes right up. It's really quick and really easy. The problems sort of come in, though, when you're getting beyond something that's really easy for the voice search to recognize, whether it's a foreign film or something with a name of a character that's hard to pronounce, or a gibberish title, or if you're somebody who has a speech impediment or a speech disorder, you still have to do text search. And the way they've laid it out is much, much worse than any of the other companies are doing. A lot of the other ones stick to the, big square layout that you see on the screen, and you navigate around with the cursor, and you punch it in, and it's not great. But what Amazon's done is lay out this carousel from left to right that goes A to Z, and actually A to space. And you can't swing back around to the beginning, and you have to type in every letter one by one. So if you're looking for something like La Jetée or La Dolce Vita, which the voice search can't pick up, that means you have to scroll all the way from the beginning of the alphabet all the way to the end to enter these letters. And while you can, in theory, use voice search across the entire platform, you can't use it within the other apps and content sources. It's really only for Amazon. So if you're in the Netflix app and you hold down the voice search button, it kicks you back out to the home screen and then performs a search on Prime videos and the Instant Play videos. Now, Amazon does pull in results from Hulu. They do have a tie-in there, but they kind of bury those in a menu. So even if it's available for free on Hulu, but you have to pay $5.99 through Amazon, it's going to pull up the Amazon result first, and then you have to click through to a menu to see the Hulu option. The other big thing they talked about, and we mentioned this earlier, is power, speed. There's all of this processing under there. And while that works really well for navigating the UI, and they've kept that carousel layout where you scroll left to right to view all these things, and everything's super responsive, really most of that power is for playing games. That's where it really comes into play. Yeah,
and it's interesting because that power was also part of what they touted for bringing up stuff really quickly, right? Part of the Fire TV's touted capability is that it has the ability to pull up stuff immediately. Faster than Apple TV, faster than your game box, using a service called ASAP, which is somewhat predictive, and it doesn't work great, honestly, in my experience. It doesn't predict the shows that I necessarily watch all the time, and it doesn't work as well as it was advertised at the event that we were at, right?
No.
At least maybe not for me. How about you?
No, when we saw it on stage and in the demo area for the press afterwards, it was instantaneous. You pressed play and a movie started playing. There was no loading, no buffering, no nothing. But honestly, when I got it home and I hooked that thing up, that has never worked once. Every time I watch a buffering screen, and it's faster than an Apple TV, it's faster than a Roku for sure, but it's still there. And even once you're watching a movie, it still takes some time. If you're going to fast forward, say, more than 5 or 10 minutes into the piece, then it stops and it buffers and it loads all over again. So it's nice in theory if it worked the way it did during the demo, if it worked the way it did, how they describe it, then it would be an amazing, amazing thing, but ultimately it just kind of falls flat.
And the third pillar is the openness.
Yes.
Right? That Amazon touted that this is a very open system. Anybody who wants to develop an app for it can. You have to still go through an approvals process. You have to submit to Amazon to an extent. But there is some openness that they touted.
I mean, it's actually probably even more closed than a Roku. And the thing with it is they're promoting it as being an open platform. And technically, yes, you're right. It is an open thing and anybody can develop for it. But the problem is that it's this additional ecosystem that people have to
Sure.
not necessarily develop for independently, since it is ultimately Android, and Android's roots really poke their ugly head through a little bit during use. So again, yes, it's open, anybody can do it, but do they want to, and are they going to be able to lure these companies and lure developers into building for their platform and getting apps into their store?
So Amazon's Fire TV is a sort of game console. As you can see here, we are playing some of Amazon's video games using the gamepad. It's sold separately for $40, and it's a lot like the Xbox 360 gamepad, except to be perfectly honest, it's not as good. The thumbsticks are just about as good. They're concave, and they've got a couple of nubbins on the side, so you feel like you know where you're pushing, and they click in, and they feel pretty good. But in general, the build of the whole thing feels pretty third-party. It feels like kind of like a bad, well, not bad, I'm sorry. It feels like a pretty okay Xbox 360 third-party gamepad, which means it works perfectly serviceably when you're playing various games on Fire TV. But it's not great, right? It works well enough. There's also a couple of weird things in that there is a back button here and a menu button here, as well as a home button. These don't always act the same way. Sometimes this acts as a start button, sometimes this acts as a select button. There's also an Amazon Game Circle button down here if you want to jump into your various Game Circle information in any given game. You can check your achievements, a summary of the game where you're at, and some leaderboards, that kind of stuff.
On the whole, it just sort of seems like they're sending a bit of a mixed message to consumers, and they haven't even quite figured out what they want to do. When they get to version 2.0, it might be a really compelling product, but at the moment it's kind of a tough sell.
Sure.
It's $100 if you want to play the games, which Amazon, is saying it's not a game console, but it's still
a bonus.
It's a bonus. But if they're investing money in building original titles, and they've got this relatively nice game controller accessory, that's another $40 on top of it. And honestly, to really get the most out of it, you need to have a Prime subscription, which is another $100 a year.
And for me, as a game console, it's really hard to recommend because it's not a great game console, to be perfectly frank. When you quit out of games, it doesn't prompt you that you're going to lose a bunch of progress if you haven't saved. Not all games function the same way. There isn't necessarily a tie-in to your Game Circle account, which is Amazon's overarching tie-in. It's your sign-in service, basically. And that is a real issue, right? If you're somebody who's actually into video games or pretty into video games, you could probably opt for a video game console over this and get not only all of the set-top box streaming functions, but real video games. So it's a hard sell, I think, for either somebody in the market for a set-top box or somebody who's in the market for a game console. And I don't know that there's anybody in the market for both, but not a great version of either.
Skype TX, a new client from Skype, specifically made for broadcasters. It gives broadcasters a studio-grade Skype experience.